50 years ago, almost every part of Wales reverberated to the sound of steam-hauled freight trains. The livelihoods of hundreds of Welsh communities depended on the men who ran the railways. Then, in the 1960s, Chairman of British Railways, Dr. Richard Beeching, took an axe to the rail system of Wales. Depots were closed and jobs were lost as freight was transferred from rail to road, and steam power was scrapped in favour of diesel. But what could not be erased were the memories of the men who worked the railways of Wales in the age of steam.
They used to have a code that once the banker got up behind the train, he would tell the front train by going beep, 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 and the front one would do the same, and off you'd go.
Well, when you look at a steam engine and the men working on it, there was more to it than meets the eye, you know, especially on the firing side.
Straight away, there was one behind the other. There was no stopping in them days. You were lucky if you got a bite to your butty because you were that busy.
With the enthusiasm of volunteers, Heritage Railways have done much to bring back the joys of steam trains to the people of Wales over the past 40 years. Enthusiasts like Jim Clemens filmed coal trains and engine sheds before they disappeared. Much of this invaluable footage has never been seen on television before. This is a celebration of the glory days of steam, past and present, and the memories of the last generation of men to work steam-hauled freight in Wales. It's the story of Beating Beeching. Early morning on a steam gala day at Llangollen Railway finds staff and volunteers busy preparing the engines for the work ahead. There is immense pride that all 6 locomotives have been rebuilt and maintained at the shed. The engines are an important part of what has made the railway a major tourist attraction. Many of the people who work here were smitten with steam in their childhoods simply because their father worked on the railways, like Dave Owen, Chief of Engineering.
Well, my father worked on the railways as a fireman and a driver in the days of steam. He worked out at Crows Newid at Wrexham, and I obviously as a youngster got hooked on steam locos. Didn't bother collecting numbers, just had to be by a steam engine, whether it was in the shed, on a footplate, just got addicted at an early age. Just the smell, the feeling of power, the heat, it just became a fascination with the steam loco.
The scene at Llangollen today is the nearest one can get to a lost world of skills and know-how of steam engines, a world of experience from engine sheds across Wales before the Beeching cuts of the 1960s. Then, thousands of men worked on the railways, many based at sheds like Croesnewydd, Denbigh, Carmarthen, Newport, Aberbeeg or Swansea. The shed at Pontypool Road was one of the busiest in the valleys, and many a young Welshman started work on the railways here. This film brings back fond memories for Tony Morgan, who worked at Pontypool Road in the 1950s.
We are now at Pontypool Road, where I worked as a young lad. There is Jimmy Watkins, an old engine driver, which I knew quite well, with his oil can, doing his preparation before he goes out on a train. There's a small tanky engine, which works in the sidings. I think that's Len Off and his driver on one of the sidings. That's Bill Harris. That's Ted Ashman. He was one of the good drivers.
This rare footage of Welsh drivers belies the hard life on the railways. Young lads started their working day at 3 a.m. if they were assigned as a caller to make sure crews were at the sheds for the first trains of the day.
Early hours of the morning, they used to send you out on an old-fashioned bike, a great big sit-up-and-beg thing, around Griffithstown and Sebastopol, where most of the engine drivers lived, to call them out to make sure they wasn't late to get into work, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And you'd be no lights, it'd be pitch black, and you'd be walking up the garden path, and you get to the door, and you just go on the knocker to knock it, and the door would open, and the driver said, "Don't you dare knock this door," he said. "Wake my wife up. I'm awake. I'll be in." I said, "OK, thank you very much," and run off.
Working the coal trains of South Wales was tough. Railwaymen drew on skills developed over 100 years since the first locomotives of the 1850s. Firemen had to build the engine's fire to provide sufficient steam power at the right moment to haul heavy wagons up the steep gradients common throughout the valleys. Driver Dennis Jones was a fireman at Abercynon in the 1950s.
You built your fire towards the firebox door, and you built a good platform there, so you slide the shovel and you could direct your coal right at any part of the firebox.
Different engines needed different fires, and you obviously got to learn about this. You had the haystack fire, the saucer fire, the hill fire, each corner fire. Each one had a different way, and they would steam better.
Here at Llangollen, firemen carefully build their fires in readiness for another gala day. They use the best coal available, but it is prone to creating clinker, a stony residue made up of impurities produced when coal burns. The quality of coal has always been an issue for firemen.
The goods sheds used to get rubbish coal, really. They used to mix it with some good coal and bad coal, and we used to have to put up with it, you know. And you'd get a lot of clinker. I think the best coal was kept for the passenger turns. From Landau, they used to get all the best coal on the London runs. But the goods sheds used to get a bit of good stuff and rubbish mixed. And we have to clean the fire more often.
The main thing, of course, is to keep steam. And you had to learn the best way to keep steam, because there's different types of coal. Now with the Welsh coal, that was great stuff, that was, because it would just expand and keep the heat going all the time. But when you had coal coming down from, say, like Derby Brights, they call them, you put a shovelful in and whoosh, it is gone in no time, you know, and it wouldn't maintain the bed of the fire.
Before the Beeching cuts, Welsh railways carried all kinds of freight, be it coal, cattle or food. Alongside sheds like Pontypool Road were vast shunting yards where the assembly and sorting of wagon loads into freight trains took place. At the Death Railway Club, retired railwaymen meet to talk over old times. Among them is Ray Stevens, who worked as a shunter at Neath Yard. He had his own way of keeping track of the work.
All up here, all in your head. Neath Yard was all on a gradient. So once you picked the brake up, the wagon was gone. So you had to take them down carefully up to the upside, where the shunters were forming the trains then ready to get all the loaded out, going up to Margam first, and then going from there further up to London.
Shunting yards were notoriously hazardous places where all sorts of tricks were used.
I remember one day, Griff John, he was from Port Albert, I think, and Griff John, he was about 6'2" and about 17 stone, and he'd put the brakes down with his behind. He'd sit on the brake, and it took 2 of us to get the brake back up, because it would go into the last hole. But Griff used to sit on him, and I could hear him laughing as he was doing it. He knew he couldn't get the brakes up for the wagon.
The movement of freight trains up and down the lines of Wales was kept under control by the signalmen. Many of the enthusiasts' films show engine crews and signalmen exchanging tokens, just as they do today at Llangollen. Harry Lowndes, who worked as a signalman in North Wales in the 50s and 60s, remembers it well.
The token system was a machine you had, and there was 3, 4 or 5 tokens in the machine, and it covered single track, where there was only one, as they used to say, one engine in steam allowed along that track at one time. And when the train come to the signal box, you'd take the token out of the machine and hand it to the driver.
These films of the axed lines to Brecon capture the atmosphere of a vanished world of branch railways as crews and signalmen exchange tokens. No matter how many single-track sections there were on a line, the token system ensured trains would never collide. Brian King worked the Neath and Brecon line.
The system we worked on in N&B was that the signalman had a little frame outside he'd stand in, and you give him yours with one hand and grab his with the other, you know. It used to be pretty quick change, and it was a bit eerie, like, and I have dropped them on occasions, and you have to stop and go back for them. So the driver wasn't too pleased then.
Many of the signal boxes along the Rhuaben to Barmouth line oversaw single-track sections. One of these was near Bala Lake at Llanuwchllyn. There's been a signal box here since the line was built in the 1860s. And although this line was axed by Beeching in 1965, the box still survives as part of the restored Bala Lake Railway. John Roberts is returning to Llanuwchllyn, where he first started as a signalman in 1955.
Now we're entering the signal box. Pretty much the same as it was during my time here. There was the 2 instruments, the token instrument for Drws and Alt there, and the token instrument for Bala Junction there. The frame is pretty much, well, it's exactly the same, but it has a number of white levers now which are not operative and with what it is today.
John Roberts is pictured with the station master in 1964, a few months before the line closed. The mostly Welsh-speaking signalmen would talk to one another by the wall phone that connected every box along the line.
Lle mae'r dawn tren ydi? Ydi o gwmpas Llandrillo neu Llanderfel? O ie, ne fo, galwch chi pan fyddwch chi'n barod. Iawn. A cymwch ddwrnod da ar y ceffylau ydi, gobeithio gnwch chi pyn bach o arian heddiw. Iawn. Ta-da ydi.
During the years of steam-hauled freight, the signal boxes of Wales handled far more traffic than at any time since. And for signalmen, the work was hard and more dangerous than it seemed. Some levers they operated pulled a cable that could be connected to a distant signal several miles away.
When you're looking at the levers and you're thinking, now, where is the signal position? If it's close to the box, quite easy to pull off. But if you're pulling 3 miles of wire, that's a different kettle of fish. It gets very, very heavy to pull the wire. And I mean, I'm known that you put your foot up to get hold of the lever and give it a good tug over. And many a time I've had it that the wire snapped. And you put your foot against the thing and you'd be pulling, and it just snapped. And I went back straight into the glass windows that was at the back of me. When the steam trains were going, there was a lot more steam trains about in good, and you had to regulate what to let go and what to hold back. Straight away, there was one behind the other. There was no stopping in them days. You was on the go from when you got there to when you went home. You were lucky if you got a bite to your butty because you were that busy.
On steam gala days at Llangollen Railway, they like to simulate the working activity of stations in North Wales before the Beeching cuts. After the axe fell on the Rwabon to Barmouth line, goods trains once again steam back and forth along the 8 miles between Carrog and here at Llangollen station. The revived railway has come a long way since it was started by a few enthusiasts in 1975. Dave Owen joined them the same year.
We used to have the workshops under the signal box in the platform. There was no track here, just a few lengths of line in the station. And bit by bit, it just became a desire to move the thing forward and try to replace something that had been taken away.
Freight such as slate, stone and cattle was transported through here originally, but in the new age of steam at Llangollen, the station is busier than ever, beating Beeching at its best. John Roberts also worked at the signal box here in the 1960s.
Oh, thanks. Hello, Charles.
Hello, John. How are
morning.
you? Nice
How
to
are
see
you?
you, yes.
Nice to see you
Nice
once
morning,
again.
yeah.
John Roberts has popped in to see his friend Charles Wilson, signalling inspector at the revived railway.
We're dealing probably with more engine movements here now than what John was when the line was open, because this box was normally switched out and they only used to open it for excursion traffic or dropping goods wagons off into the siding behind the signal box here, or putting a locomotive in the spur the other end of the bridge there. So it's probably more busy now than it was in John's day.
I'll admit to that, yeah. It's just different. With these short frames, you know, you could just stood by the frame, right? Yeah. You stood by the frame, you'd never moved. But with a frame of about 50, 55 levers, so it's just Bala Junction and Borma, that and them places, you had to walk along the frame as you work it, you know.
Yeah, put it back, that, no, number 2 now.
Put this one back?
Yeah.
Oh, it goes back too, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I didn't expect to see that going back so hard.
Yeah. Go on, John.
Another pull, I'll have a bad back now.
Yeah.
There we are.
Today, there are very few drivers alive who know what it was like to take 700-ton coal trains up and down the steep gradients of South Wales in the age of steam. Among footplate crews, this was known as incline working. Here with the men at the Neath Railway Club is Dick Jones, now one of the oldest surviving drivers of steam freight trains in Wales. He worked for 45 years on the footplate, 25 of them as driver based at the Glynneath shed.
I wasn't nervous. We were all individuals, see, when we and then, you know, some were nervous on the job. I was working a train one day and we had a guard from Neath. And I didn't know the guard at all. I was coming back from the docks, the train of empties. And when we got to Glynneath, he said to me, "Driver, do you know," he said, "I was on my hands and knees in the van coming up." "Why?" my fireman said to him. "Were you cleaning the van out?" "No," he said. "I was asking the Lord to take me home safe."
Some gradients were so steep it needed the power of a second engine pushing from behind. This was called banking.
Going up the gradient at Glynneath to Aberdare, it was 1 in 49. It's a steep gradient. And you'd have a cistern engine with it as well. It would bank you up, you know. And we'd have about 30 wagons, loaded wagons on, you know.
They used to have a code that once the banker got up behind the train, he would tell the front train by going, beep, 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 and the front one would do the same, and off you'd go.
Though it seemed hard work for crews and engines taking a train up the steep inclines of the valleys, it was much more precarious bringing it down the other side. In this remarkable footage, a steam engine on a gradient with heavy coal wagons cannot keep control, even with brakes down hard and sand being poured onto the rails for extra grip. At Llangollen, a staff member demonstrates how the crews operated a braking system practiced throughout the age of steam-hauled freight.
When you're coming down an incline, the guard would come down, or the brakesman, you call him, and you start pulling away quietly, and he'd be putting the brakes down. And when he knew he was sufficient brakes down, he would just blow 2 on the whistle for him. And then he'd go back to the guard's van, and away you go. It will come through experience, really, because you knew by the stroke of the engine, the power of the engine, you know. You knew that you had sufficient brakes that you could come to a stand, you know.
Two particular steep gradients were either side of Quaker's Yard on the Merthyr to Pontypridd line. As a fireman, Dennis Jones knew the line well, so he was immediately alert to a misunderstanding between his driver and guard at Quaker's Yard, an error that was to result in a runaway train.
We came out of Black Lion Colliery, which is Merthyr Vale Colliery, and we approached Quaker's Yard, and we come to the top of the bank where the stopboard is, and then we wait for the guard to come down. He stopped putting brakes down, and I'm looking back for the guard. And he was on the van. I said, "You haven't whistled for sufficient brakes, have you?" I said to the driver. He said, "No, I haven't." Well, I said, "The guard's back in the van, give me the tip." So I said, "You haven't got enough brakes down." We couldn't stop, there's no argument about that at all, and we were picking up speed all the time, and it's a 1 in 40 bank. So we came through Abercynon station, the signalman was hanging out of the window, and I was motioning him to go, that I wanted a straight run.
Luckily, the signalman was able to divert the runaway train onto a level siding sufficiently long for the engine and coal wagons to come to a stop.
That was a nasty feeling, really, because you lose all control, and you can't do anything at all about it. You just got to, well, you got to sit and wait or jump.
The line from Blaenavon Yards to Pontypool Road was built in the 1870s to transport coal from Big Pit high up on the moors of Blaenavon. The gradients here were some of the steepest in the country. In 1980, Big Pit and the surrounding collieries closed. But the very same year, enthusiasts started the Pontypool and Blaenavon Railway, and since 1983, steam trains had travelled again on a short section of the old line. Dennis Jones worked the coal trains here as a young fireman in the late 1940s, and can still remember the challenge of the gradients.
I can relate coming up here, actually. It was years ago. A very steep part of the track which you had to be so careful. And it is a complicated road to manoeuvre. We knew exactly what was required on incline working. And to me, it was a fine art.
The many inclines and gorges of the valleys presented plenty of challenges for the Victorian builders of the railways in South Wales. But transporting the coal was paramount, and no matter where a mine was located, bridges, tunnels or viaducts would be built. The spectacular Crumlin Viaduct spanned the Ebble and Kendon valleys on the Vale of Neath line. Opened in 1857, this engineering marvel stood 200 feet at its highest point. Tony Morgan fired trains over it a century later.
There were several viaducts, but there was nothing like Crumlin Viaduct, because when you were up there, the wind, it was quite high. There was only a small door on the western engine, so it was right through and it'd be blowing you. Very, very exciting, really, because you were way up, and I used to go over there all hours of the night and all hours of the day.
The Crumlin Viaduct, which had stood for over a century, was demolished within 3 years of Beeching's closure of the line in 1964. For the people of Crumlin, there is very little left for them to remember of this symbol from Wales's glorious railway past. Restored railways have had great success in bringing the experience of steam railways to a modern public. But since Dr. Beeching finished off steam-hauled freight in 1967, it is simply not possible for these railways to convey the reality of working steam trains. Taking 70 wagons of coal up and down the valleys of Wales is preserved only on enthusiasts' films and in the memories of railwaymen like Tony Morgan.
Here we have an old video, and after watching it, I just could not believe it. It took me back right to where I was a young lad working on the railway, and the sounds, the smoke, the smell, everything was great on the railway, and it was lovely to put your head out through the side and just smell.
At Llangollen, volunteers and staff do still run goods trains at special steam galas. They've earned a reputation for their expertise in bringing steam engines back to life. Often these engines spent many years slowly rusting away at Woodin's Yard, Barry Island. Here in 1968, nearly 300 former British Rail engines awaited their fate. Over the next 4 decades, enthusiasts sought to beat Beeching by buying these scrapped steam engines. Llangollen started rebuilding its first steam engine, Austin 1, in 1975. Dave Owen was there at the start.
There was no handbook on how to repair or restore an engine. But even steam locomotives are pretty basic machines, and so if you've got some sort of engineering nous or engineering background, you can apply that experience into problem solving and manufacture of new items, because you can't go out and buy a part anymore. You've got to manufacture it.
Llangollen has built up a valuable skill base in the heritage engineering of steam locomotives. Foxcote Manor is a fine example of what has been achieved here. Rescued from Barry's scrapyard after spending much of its working life in Wales, it has been resident at Llangollen since 1986, longer than its years with British Rail.
It's such a beautiful looking engine, and that might be just my biased opinion, but because it's been here so long, been overhauled twice here, it's its natural home, and therefore I think we all think of it as the railway's flagship. I think it just sits well. It sits well with this countryside.
Like all restored lines across Wales, Llangollen Railway is dedicated to keeping engines alive. The story of the remembrance and preservation of steam railways is one of triumph over tragedy, pride in the past and hope for the future. Dr. Beeching had no idea of the thriving heritage industry he would create when he axed the steam-hauled railways of Wales.